You're going to have this time to talk to us about what you're doing is so fantastic. And I have told all my author friends and all my um, um, independent bookstore, this is fabulous. Let's begin with the story behind the story. I'll let you
Okay,
all talk.
I'm going to start out because I have an origin story, and then Jenna is really the Oprah of the Mighty Blaze. So I have to take you back to March, right before the pandemic. This is my book, With or Without You, from Algonquin Books. And I had all these events that were lined up for me. The first one in March was for the National Library Association in Texas with 1,000 people. So I did a whole speech. I got it all organized. I had all my hand movements. And the week before I was set to go, the publisher called me up and said, everything's canceled. And I said, what are you telling me? They said, no, the pandemic just started and everybody's canceled. We're not doing it. So I hung up the phone, and I remember walking around my house saying, no, no, nothing is canceled. So I went to my computer and I videotaped myself doing the speech to all the librarians, and I sent it to Algonquin saying, this is what they missed. And they got back to me and they said, this is great, we're going to send this to all the libraries. So they did that, and I began thinking, oh, nothing is canceled. That's really interesting. So I put the word out to my friends on Facebook saying, look, I know everybody thinks everything is canceled, but I'm telling you, no, it's not, because I'm going to start the Nothing is Canceled book tour. All you have to do is do a little 2-minute video for me, shout out another indie bookstore, an indie bookstore, and shout out another author whose tour has been canceled. I will promote it. I have followers. I will make this happen. I thought I was going to get like 5 people, and I ended up getting 200. And not only that, word started spreading, and I got a call from Ron Charles at the Washington Post, who said, what are you doing, Caroline? And I said, I don't know. And I really didn't know. So then I got a phone call from the most amazing Jenna Blum, the author of The Lost Family and Those Who Save Us, and you should immediately buy all her books. And Jenna said, do you need help? And I said, oh my God, please help me, please help me. And thus began our 40-hour days planning and building a Mighty Blaze. Mighty Blaze is Jenna's idea for a title. And I'm going to let Jenna talk a little bit now. So go ahead, Jenna.
I have to unmute myself. My puppy takes all Zoom calls as a cue to get out all his squeaky toys and play with them wildly in the background. So I'm hoping that he's not going to do that right now. So thank you, Caroline. Caroline is damning herself with faint praise. The Blaze would exist under a rock if it weren't for her generosity and her star power. And so like, this is how my day goes. Like I wake up and I'm like, I would like to interview Erica Jong. And so I email Caroline and say, Caroline, can you get Erica for me, please? And she's like, doll for you, sure. And because she's a book reviewer and because she's Caroline and nobody could ever say no to Caroline, I have had the privilege of meeting and interviewing so many of my author idols for The Blaze, from Erica Jong to Cheryl Strayed to Anna Quinlan to Pam Houston to Lionel Shriver, just fantastic people. But the greatest joy of The Blaze is that every Tuesday, this is what we started out with, and it's the maypole around which The Blaze revolves. We feature authors whose books are coming out in the pandemic. The reason I'm not in my pajamas is that I didn't have time for a costume change. I just came from interviewing Melanie Benjamin, whose new book, The Children's Blizzard, which is phenom, is out this week. And I said to her, what is it like to release a book not only into a pandemic, but into an emotional, a political bleep storm? And she's like, it's really hard. So I just feel, I mean, even for Melanie, who has so much star power of her own, it's so hard to release a book into a pandemic. It's so hard not to be able to connect with people in person. And so I'm so grateful to Caroline and our team, which now is like 29 volunteers, 29 creative volunteers, from producers to interviewers to schedulers to graphic designers, social media people, like just helping me every day, listening to my bossiness. Like apparently I'm very bossy, and who knew? But every day we offer something to the writing community to connect writers and readers. So we have Pub Day Tuesdays, we have Independent Bookstore Wednesdays, Authors in Conversation on Thursdays, which is so great and texturizing. And then Friday Frontliners for authors who are legendary, like Melanie, and like the authors who Caroline keeps obliging.
John Irving.
John Irving was one of our first Friday Frontliners, and we were all so scared we had to drink whiskey for like a week beforehand. Before we like shoved Caroline out on stage and went, you do him. You
have to understand John Irving is like one of my heroes in writing, because he writes just moral fiction, and his book The World According to Garp saved my life. And one day about 5 years ago, I decided to just write him a letter and tell him like how much his book meant to me and how much he has meant to me. And to my surprise, I got a letter back, and it was this handwritten letter that I still had. And it said, "Dear Caroline, I had to read your letter 3 times to figure out that you actually were writing me a letter and not asking me for something. And because of that, I want to write you back." And he wrote me this wonderful, wonderful letter. And it was just incredible. And I had asked him about, there was this quote that he has that says, I'm sort of reading it now: "If you don't feel you're possibly on the edge of humiliating yourself when you're writing or losing control of the whole thing, then what you're doing probably isn't very vital. If you don't feel that you're writing over your head, why bother doing it? And if you don't have some doubt of your authority to tell your story, you're not telling the right story." And John actually told me, I never said that, even though it's all over the internet that he did. He said, "I never said it, but it sounds like something I would have said." So next, fast forward a year, when I had a book coming out, and I went to John's publicist because I didn't want to ask him directly because I was afraid, "Do you think like John might read or blurb my book?" And she said, "Oh, let me ask him." And she went to ask him, and she came back and she said the magic words, "John knows who you are." So then I passed out. And when I came to again, she said, "He's not blurbing anyone. I'm really sorry." So fast forward again, Mighty Blaze, when we were talking about who would we love to have, I said, "Oh, Stephen King," couldn't get him. John Irving, yeah, thought, "I can't get him. But I went to his publicist and I told her the whole story, that John knows me, and please, it would be so great. And I had to go through 3 publicists and John's assistant to get to John Irving. And John's assistant was always, every day it would be, "Well, John would like to see the questions you're going to ask him so he can think about his answers." I thought, oh my God. So I wrote out all the questions. I figured 10 questions is good. And then it came back through the assistant with, "John would like you to look at his responses and change your questions a little bit." And then it came through that. And then finally everything was approved. And the day of the event, I was so nervous. And you meet your hero, but he was lovely. He was like completely wonderful. And he answered all the questions. And after a while I realized I don't have to interview him at all. I'm just going to let him talk, which he did. And it was just one of the greatest moments of my life. Really, really exciting.
It was so great. And all our interviews are on our YouTube channel, which is Mighty Blaze YouTube. And so they're evergreen and you can see them. But I still remember, like, while Caroline is talking, I had a sense memory of that interview. And it was so early on in the Blaze that, I started this by putting up a Facebook page for my friends whose books launches had been canceled, and just running their covers and saying, like, you guys should check this out, and then join forces with Caroline. And the idea behind the title was, if we put a bunch of book candles together, we can make a mighty blaze, light the way from the readers to the writers. And I thought of this because I literally had maybe 20 friends publishing on May 5th. May 5th was a huge pub date in 2020. And we watched as their tours were extinguished one by one, and all my own events. Like, I'm such a microphone whore. I'll do anything to get to a microphone and anything to get to an event. And I watched like the Grand Central Station train board as like one by one, they were canceled. And I just thought, no, like, my response to any cataclysm is indignation and then action. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to let this happen to people. I know that they've spent 3 years, 5 years, 10 years writing these books. I'm not going to let this go down without a fight. So I'm going to put up these social media pages because I love social, and then join forces with Caroline. And within a week of our being up, Ron Charles so nicely shouted us out in the Washington Post. And it was like having the only lifeboat rowing away from the Titanic. We had like 1,400 writers who were just like, please help me, please. And we're like, okay. So it blew up, and I was trying to manage this. Like most days I would sit in my underwear, like get out of bed, run down to the laptop, like start promoting. And then Caroline said, well, we have John Irving, and we had this cocktail party. I remember watching that interview. We were all so scared. I dressed up, like I showered. I was in for like 5 minutes. I had so much makeup on. I'm like, it's John Irving, you guys. And then during the interview, Caroline was so masterful with him and so gentle. And he was so kind. And
He was so kind. He was really kind.
so
And
well-spoken.
I do want to say, like, my next Xanax moment is, I don't know how to pronounce his last name correctly, but David Duchovny or
Yeah.
Duchovny, is that right? Which one?
Duchovny.
I got him. He's going to be interviewed in 2 weeks. Judy Collins is coming on also.
Next week.
Yeah.
That's you, honey. You get Judy.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. I'm not very good with scheduling.
The whole Blaze staff is lined up to sleep with David Duchovny. And so I'm like, Caroline, step aside. We're all going to sleep with David Duchovny. So I'm so sorry. It's not just you anymore loving David Duchovny, but I'll hold them all back for you so you can interview him. But like, we love him. I mean, it's going to
It's also, I do want to say that this kind of really snowballed. Jenna and I started and we said, we're just two women writers in yoga pants. We have no idea what we're doing. We're flying a plane. We don't know where the engine is. And all of a sudden we started getting media after media. We got the Authors Guild supporting us, poets and writers, the Washington Post, the New York Times, Lit Hub, on. And all these writers were coming saying, I want to support you. I want to support you. We were in so much media that, you know, every day we'd wake up and there would be something. And the great thing about the Mighty Blaze is that because it happened during the early, really, really dark days of the pandemic, we were so busy, we didn't have time to think about what was going outside. I mean, Jenna and I were like working until like 2 a.m. in the morning. Then we'd wake up in the morning and say, what do we do now? We have to hire more people. We don't know what we're doing. And it just sort of took off.
Yeah, it was crazy. I don't know what I would have done without the Blaze as a bullet to bite on. I think Caroline really saved my life with that. But
Jenna saved my life.
Yeah. I hear a lot of people talking about how they, have been living in close quarters with their families for the last, I don't know, 9, 10 months, and how, you get cabin fever. And I live by myself, and I have a black lab puppy now, but I didn't at the time. And I think if I hadn't had the Blaze family, I was really worried about how my brain would have cannibalized itself in lockdown. I'm in Boston. We get locked down here. We lock down. And so, seeing a live person was sort of unusual. And so to have like my whole Blaze family pop up every day on my screens, like people I love and love to work with, and authors I'd loved my whole life and idolized, like it was just such a gift. And it is a gift. And we're going to keep it going after the pandemic. But like, wow, like what a weird life changer, like what a weird game changer. So.
Yeah, and as I said, Jenna eventually is going to have her own TV book show. I mean, she is a mega major personality, and the Blaze would not exist if it was not for her. And there's all kinds of plans now for doing this, because we feel that we're all writers and readers. We're all swimming in the same ocean, and we have to keep each other afloat. And also, there's something truly wonderful about building this community and helping other people, because you start to realize when you help other people, you're helping yourself. Oh, and I also have to give a shout out to Kathy now, which I should have done initially, and I forgot. I want to thank Kathy, because without her and without the Pulpwood Queens, so much of this stuff wouldn't have happened. I've gone to, I think this is my third Pulpwood Queens weekend. The first one was a circus theme, and we all dressed up as clowns and stuff. And it was I soon learned that Kathy and the Pulpwood Queens and the Timber Guys are these major force of nature. It's just this amazing, incredible thing. And now that I've come to know and love Kathy, I know that there's nobody except maybe Jenna who has a bigger heart. So thank you. Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah, it's not me, but thank you, Kathy. This was the first year I was supposed to be there in person. So of course, right. But next year in Jerusalem, as they say, like I will say next year at Pulpwood.
Well, we're praying that will happen. But I have to tell you something funny. Melanie Benjamin, is our author and has been for years, and have her the same day that you guys do this. But her first book was Confessions of a Supermom. She's come a long way.
Wow.
And I actually did a television show with her called The Beauty and the Book Show with Random House, where we toured the Gone with the Wind Museum, because she's named after Melanie from, Gone with the Wind in Jefferson, Texas. So it's on YouTube, but everybody subscribe to A Mighty Blaze. I want to encourage, I have so many authors that beg me to do this event. I don't know how to do technology. Caroline, you and I are in the same spot.
Oh yeah.
I had to learn how to do this, and I'm 64 years old, so an old cat can learn new tricks. So, I did this for my authors, but I'll tear up on this, but to have you guys, you're big. To have all the people that have come that are so well known and New York Times bestselling authors come is really a dream kind of come true, because this started out in front of my little salon out in the woods of East Texas under tents. And we've come a long way to our first virtual event. So I've got you down for 2022, and we're praying that we all get vaccinated soon. Have you guys gotten your vaccines yet or anything? No,
No, not yet. But
it's
soon.
It's amazing. I watch the John Irving. I watch as many as I can. And you guys meet on Thursday. Well, you meet more than just Thursdays. You're meeting
just about every day.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day except the weekends, but we're starting a baking show on Sunday.
Oh yes, the baking show.
Yeah, amazing. And women's fiction on Saturdays. So we're going to have a full roster. I think it's going to be basically like a restaurant, like every day except Mondays. And I don't do Mondays because I have to do all the social media on Mondays. So
what you're doing is amazing, and I just absolutely love it. But I've been following you, Jenna, for a long time. I remember when you had all the signatures on the Women's March that you did, and when you did that, I was sent off
on my shirt. So I could go in the other room and get this, but I went to the Women's March in 2017, like November 7th, 2016, I woke up and I was like, and I told you my reaction to any sort of cataclysm is indignation and action. So I booked a hotel in Washington and was like, I'm going to Washington. But then everybody who couldn't go for whatever reason, it was too far, or they had someone they were caring for at home, or it was too expensive or whatever, I was like, send your name to me and I will put it on my shirt. And I had this long white shirt from H&M and I wrote people's names on, and it had literally, by the time I went, over 1,000 signatures on it, which was so cool. And I did wear it to the Women's March. And it wasn't really a march, it was the women's stand, because there were so many people there that I got out of the subway and then we just stood like this, yelling at everybody.
I was on that shirt. I was on that shirt. So
you're on the shirt, and I'm so glad, and I'll march for anybody, anytime. I will never stop doing that. So if you guys want me to pick up any cause for you, I am happy to do that.
I think this is a really big cause. And I think all of these grassroots initiatives that people start that are authentic, that are, you don't plan them out. They're kind of a survival tactic.
Right.
I think those are the ones that are known, like Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, her starting that because her dad couldn't read. We're going to change the world through reading. So if all of us join forces, whether the little guy, who started it in her hair salon bookstore in Texas, or the big authors in, where you guys are up in the New York City, Boston areas, I'm just thrilled that you're here. But tell us what you're going to go to a television show, and we want to hear more about it.
That's my dream for Jenna.
Well, it's a given. Why don't they make this happen?
I told my Blaze staff that I wanted to do a show because I thought it would be really funny. My dad was a news writer for CBS. He wrote for Walter Cronkite. He covered Vietnam. He covered Watergate. So I dearly wish, I have said for 4 years, I'm so glad he's not alive to see this, but now I wish he were, because he would love to cover this unfolding history that we're living through. But I grew up in TV studios with my dad. Like, I was always the take your daughter to work day kid, and I would just go and watch my dad do his thing, which was not glamorous at all. There was a lot of yelling and like last minute, a lot of swearing, which is where I get my mouth. But I thought it would be really fun to have a TV show. And I feel like if I have a spirit animal, it's probably a cross between like Lucille Ball and Kristen Wiig and like Leslie Jones, So I'm like, come on, guys, let's do a show. I'm gonna run it. I'm gonna be on it. And it's Caroline, like the whole staff was like, no, Jenna, because like, you need writers, you need producers, you need to work on this like all day, every day. What about the other writers we're supposed to support? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's not just the Jenna show. Fine, but like someday. Steve asked in the chat, is Grub Street still going strong? And it is. Grub Street is a school I teach for in Boston. I've taught there for over 20 years. I started out when we were just teaching one class of fiction, one class of poetry, and now they're like this giant writing school that has a writing conference every year called the Muse in the Marketplace, and this year it's online. And so Grub was at a pivot point before the pandemic, moving from one place to another physically, and now it's sort of like suspended in jello like everybody else is, waiting for the pandemic to be over, but the classes are still going strong. I still teach my novel workshop every week. Every Sunday I teach the novel workshop. So like Caroline and like most of you writers on this chat, I wear a lot of hats. Like
Right.
Tonight I get to wear a tiara, but like most of the time I teacher hat. And I mean, what you said, Kathy, is so generous about the New York Times bestselling authors. Like, we work hard, but like honestly, I mean, everybody works hard. Like, I get up and I wear yoga pants all the time. Like, I'm not kidding about that. And, during the pandemic, I only have to change them like once a week. It's so great. Like, the writer life is like not totally glamorous. It's just like, we just get up and we pray to find inspiration, and we pray to be worthy of that inspiration. And, we work hard and we false start and we fail like everybody else. So the New York Times thing is a fluke, I feel like, right?
Yeah. It's I've had writing students who I don't know where they got the idea, but they would ask me like, well, so how far along do I have to get before I have the beach house? And I would look at them and say, the beach house? Are you kidding? You're really lucky if you can pay your rent for many, many years. Writing is something you do because you have to. If you don't have to do it, do anything else, work the deli counter, be a painter, be anything. Well, painting is the same as writing, but it's something like, if I could have, I always joke that I should have gone to dental school, because at least then I'd know what to do every day.
Well, I also want to say that when I was interviewed on the Mighty Blaze, your team is awesome. And your tech guy is in a book club, that an all-guy book club that drinks whiskey and talks books. And Jamie Ford, who was my co-host for years, has a all-guy book club that meets in a bar in Montana. So when this is all, they're not meeting right now, but when they all get back together, we want to do a big Zoom talking about the guys book club against my book club.
Yeah, fun.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. They said it's more like a competition of who can out argue points. It's it's not like that with our book club. We're just sharing stories.
I wouldn't like a book club like that. I don't want to argue points. I want to sort of expand my knowledge and talk about the stuff I love.
But isn't it interesting how men and women, look at reading differently? I think that's fascinating. I always like to know the story behind the story. So maybe you can share with us what got you into writing, both of you. What was that spark that got you? I mean, was it going with your dad to the television? I know your story, Caroline, and I know your family dynamic. I had a similar similar one. So, but really, what was that spark that said, this is all I ever wanted to do, was read and tell stories and write? So
that's me. I guess, I mean, because my dad was a news writer, I grew up listening to the sound of his typewriter in the background, and I don't actually ever remember a time when I wasn't writing, and all I ever wanted to do was grow up to be a writer like my dad. And I was very lucky to have parents who were creatives. My mom was a concert pianist, and so I never had either parent say to me, when are you going to get a real job? And when I was working 3 jobs as a waitress in my 20s, and I worked in food service for like 20 years while I was becoming a writer, like waiting tables by day, or as my dad called it, waiting on. I don't know why he called it this, but I was waiting on in a diner, in a greasy spoon. I did fine dining. I was a miserable failure at fine dining. And I was doing that to make ends meet, and then writing at night. And the waiting on was something I could do without running down my mental batteries too much. But that whole time I was sending out short stories. I was doing that when I was a little kid, writing stories about mermaids and princesses. When I was 11, I had a crush on my 7th grade teacher, Mr. Stern. So I wrote a novel about him, and a romance novel starring him and me, which is probably like so suspect in so many ways these days.
Oh,
But
I want to see that.
cute.
I would love to.
I still have it. I mean, it's
I want to read it.
I'll look for it. Like, it's literally in my attic. It's like one existing manuscript, and I sent it out to publishers, like random. I had this dream that Random House was going to make me their author and like come to my front door with the Publishers Clearinghouse size check and be like, you are an author now at 11. I got letters back from all of the publishers I sent that book to, saying like, this is zany and, keep going. Like, it's not quite for us yet, but like, keep writing. And so I thought the world owed me a living as a writer. I won the 17 magazine fiction contest when I was 16 because my mom sent in one of my short stories. I didn't even know she had done it, but then I got this acceptance letter. And after that, I really thought the world owed me a living as a writer, only to find out when I graduated from college with a BA in English that the world owed me a living in food service. So it really was like a determination after that. I had early confidence. I had parents who supported me. And then I just kept bludgeoning my way into literary magazines. And I had, 3 failed novels before my first novel was published. And so determination is just as much a part of being a writer as the ability and love of putting words together. And the only sadness in this whole journey, which it has been quite a long journey, is that my dad passed before that first book was published. And when I was going through his belongings after he died, I found some of those early stories about mermaids and princesses illustrated, and on the top of one story in his spidery little handwriting, it said, "Hey, Walt, look, this kid is a genius." And so he like bought the story into the newsroom to show Walter Cronkite like what a genius his little daughter was. So like that's the kind of support I had. And I encourage anybody who is a writer, like, how important this is. If writers, give them that support, because we don't get the beach house easily. Like, we don't get instant gratification. You spend a lot of time in a room with imaginary people for like 3 or 5 or 10 years. And then finally you publish your book. It might be a pandemic. Who hears it, right? So we all have to support each other.
Right.
That's true. And every year when we do meet at Girlfriend Weekend, we have the author dinner where Pat Conroy helped me start this, where the authors wait the tables.
Yeah, I could do that.
Members love it. But it's amazing to see the faces of the first table he served. He asked them if they wanted sweet tea or non-sweet tea, and they just went, oh my God. I mean, they were just in shock. And I like to shock people, and you do too. You like to do stuff that
I do.
People say, you think so outside the box. And I go, what box? And you can't get anything, right, Jenna, if you don't ask.
Right.
Yes. Oh my God. My grandfather, my dad's dad, always used to say, you don't ask, you don't get. And I'm like, okay, you always ask.
And I just keep asking till they say yes, because usually they say no, 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 no. You know how much they charge to speak? And I go, that's okay. I'll pick his book anyway. And and that's exactly why Jay Shetty, who has a new book, Think Like a Monk, his publisher sent me 250 copies to send out to everybody who signed up for this weekend, because I just never gave up. I said, I love this guy. I love his podcast, and I know he charges 6 figures. I can't afford that, but I'll still pick his book. And by God, they sent me, and they're all in the mail. So hope you all get them.
Got them. We got them.
Because you know how the mail service has been going. So yeah. So
Okay,
Caroline,
Beth, if you charge 6 figures, that's when you get the beach house, guys.
Right, that's right.
well,
Public speaker charging 6 figures.
I need to think like a monk. Okay.
Yeah.
I need to really study this book. And so, anyway, Caroline, what about you? I mean,
I started with I was this really sickly little girl. I had asthma and I could never go outside and play, so I stayed in the library all the time. And I always asked the librarians, "Do you have any books about girls like me, like little Jewish girls with asthma?" And they said no, but they brought me this book, Mrs. Mike, which is this wonderful novel about this woman who goes up to Alaska, and it had pleurisy in it, lung disease, and I thought, yes, yes, that's somebody I can relate to. And I love the whole thing about words. And I remember when I went to school, I was bullied a lot because of my asthma. And one day this kid came up to me and said, "Hey, asthma head." And I drew myself up and I put my hands on my hips and I said, "You are so dumb. I don't have asthma. I have pleurisy." And the guy just sort of looked at me. He looked at me and he didn't know what that word was, but he showed me some respect. And I thought, oh, words have power. So I began to think, I don't want to just read stories, I want to write them. And I started writing. And everybody told me, "Oh, that's a nice hobby, but you're going to grow up and be a wife." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to grow up and be a writer." And in high school, it was the same thing. My high school teacher said, "You better think of something else to do." And in college, my first writing class I took with this, it was kind of a prominent writer at the time. And he called me in his office and he said two things. The first thing was like, "You're never going to make it." And the second thing was, "Do you want to come up to my cabin in Maine alone this weekend?" And I said, "No, no, no, no." So
Oh my God.
this is why no does not mean no. You have to really, Jenna is right, and so is Kathy. You have to persist. So I kept sending things out and getting no, 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 no. Finally, I entered a young writers contest when I was 25. And I thought, I don't have a chance of this. Every time the rejections came, I would rip them up, throw them on the ground. And one day there was a brown envelope, and I thought, I cannot even bear to look at this. Ripped it up and happened to see part of it that said, "Congratulations, you won first prize." So everything went really quickly after that. I published my first novel, Meeting Rosie Halfway, which was a sensation. And like an idiot, the naive idiot, I thought, it's always going to be this way. Every book is going to be like this. And it was not. A career is like this. So my second book did fine. Then by my third book, my publisher went out of business. So I got another publisher. They went out of business. So I told my agent I had to have a big publisher, like someone who's not going to go out of business. So I got one of the major publishers. They signed me to a 3-book deal, and they just sort of had no interest in the book. And I watched the book just sort of slowly die. And I began to feel like not only am I not going to have the beach house, I'm not going to have money to buy a bathing suit. So I kept plugging along, and I was working on my 9th novel, and my agent sold it to a big publisher on contract with 2 other books. And the editor called me up and said, "We're really sorry, Caroline, but we're not publishing this." And I said, "What?" Because it's on contract. How can you not publish it? They said, "We don't really think it's special." And I said, "What do you mean? Like, tell me what to do and I'll make it special." And there was a silence again. And she said, "We don't think that you can." So there was a silence again. And I said, "Well, what if I show you something else?" And she said, "Oh, we don't want to see anything else from you." So I hung up the phone, called my agent, called all my friends wailing, saying, my career is over. All my friends are like getting book deals, movie deals, and here I am. And nobody knows who I am. I'm the person at a party where people say, "What do you do for a living?" And I say, "I'm a writer," with a question mark. So one of my friends said, "I have an editor at Algonquin Books. I bet she would like this." And I said, "Go ahead. I'm not expecting anything." She showed it to the editor. The editor called me up, and after a while, I realized this editor's pitching me. So I interrupted her because I'm an honest person. I said, "Look, I would love to work with you. I would love to be at Algonquin, but I have to be truthful. I don't sell any books." And she laughed and she said, "Oh, honey, you will now." So they bought the book. It went into 6 printings 6 months before it was published.
Yay.
Became a New York Times bestseller second week out. The editor, the old editor, who had told me the book was not special, called my agent to ask if I wanted to come back to work with her, and she said no. So I just tell everybody, no does not mean no. Never give up. Just never give up. You never know when something's going to happen, and you can always sort of make it happen by persisting.
Absolutely. I never give up. Sometimes I have a bad weekend and get up on Monday and say, okay, let's keep going,
Yeah,
and
keep
just,
going. You never know.
we have our moments, and COVID certainly hasn't helped me at all in my mission to help authors and books. But we went into this girlfriend weekend online blind, and it's been such a success. Everybody's really enjoying it. So all the participants out there, give a shout out to Jenna and Caroline. But we are thankful for you and what you're doing. I mean, you're paying it forward. What's the good of getting to the top of the pile and you're all by yourself?
Yeah.
You're bringing everybody with you.
Right.
I appreciate that. And I hope everybody who's listening understands that this is a really big deal, and what you're doing and how you've got all these volunteers now working with you. So kudos to you. And I am just really proud of everything that you're doing for the book world. Yeah, it's great.
Same to you. But you've been doing this for years. We're just
Yeah, you have
20,
been.
20. Well, I've been doing the Pulpwood Queens book club for 21 years. But before that, I was a book publisher's rep with Algonquin and many other publishing houses. And I've had my own bookstore. I've worked on every side of the book publishing desk. In fact, I'm the new director of acquisitions.
That's right.
We're a brand new model in publishing where Lucid House Publishing, where 90% of the profits goes to the talent.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So when you want to do that book about your story and the letters, think about me, because it's Lucid, and the publisher's here today. Echo Garrett, it's out of Atlanta, Georgia, and we are launching. We've been holding off on launching all of our books, but they're now launching, and they're really doing well. So we're very pumped about all the books. It's very global, very diverse, and we're looking for the story that has not been told. And that, do you know how many young people you could reach by doing that story? Because I never even knew how to become an author. I thought they were all lived in New York when I was a kid until our teachers started reading us Laura Ingalls Wilder books. And then I go, wait a minute, that girl didn't, she didn't grow up in New York. But it never dreamed on me that I could ever become an author. And I'm working on the sequel to my first book. And, I just never dreamed. So I think that story you're telling me is a powerful one. I hear this all the time. I mean, look how many times you got turned down. Was it Pictures of You that finally was the big?
That was the not special.
That was the one that won our Pulpwood Queen Book of the Year. Yeah. So, and we're getting ready to announce our other books of the year for last year on tomorrow. So all of you will be up for our awards for next year. So hopefully, if we can get together, it's in God's hands right now. And there's a reason behind all of this. I feel like people are put in our path. I'm sharing a film Saturday night because I fell into, I've watched everything on Netflix. I've read every book. I started watching Bollywood films, and I've discovered
I love Bollywood.
Shah Rukh Khan. Okay. I love this guy. He's a visionary. He's the biggest actor in the world and has a bigger fan base than Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, anybody. And he did this movie called Om Shanti Om. And he gives a speech as he's an actor playing an actor where he wins the Indian Filmfare Award. And he gives a speech and he said, what we put, our dreams that we put out into the universe, if there are truest desires, will come back to you. And this speech, I've been sharing it over and over. And I really believe that's true. You keep going. keep putting out into the world what you want to see happen, and keep being the example that you want to see, then those things will happen. It may not happen in my lifetime because I'm getting up there, y'all. I mean, I'm really getting up there. So, but maybe the next generation or the next generation that will keep it going. Well, because the Pulpit Queens, we're the largest meeting and discussing book club in the world with our authors that are brought in the conversation. There, I mean, Oprah has the biggest online book club, and you guys have started this whole movement, and we had Adriana Trigiani on earlier. She started her own book club. You know, we all need to join forces because that's the only way we're going to change the world. So here we go. Let's all hold hands, shall we? I'm a big hand holder virtually now, but hand holder. So what if I was going to ask you if you could have one thing, I mean, in the world, what would it be? Really?
Right now?
Right now. If
Right
you could
now,
have anything.
Right now, I want our country back.
Amen to that.
Is that you, Stephen?
Yeah, that's me. Amen to that.
Yes, and you know what? I 2 summers ago, before all this happened, I went back to college and got my art degree, and I sold a painting to an art author in New Jersey. And I told her how much, and she said, I'll take it. And then I looked up how much it was going to cost to ship it to her. And it was going to be over $500. And I thought, I don't have $500. So I emailed her and I said, I have a half a mind to drive it to you. She goes, are you kidding me? That would be amazing. So I went on the road with my best friend, Twana, and I did pop-up book art and fashion shows, because these are my clothing that I design and all this stuff I do. And I took off and I had $500. Okay. And I came home with money in my pocket and I delivered the painting. And what I found, when you go out into the country and when the people of this world are not like what we're seeing on the news. People were lovely. They were embracing. The only guy ever yelled at me was in New Jersey? But anyway, I was trying to pump gas and he just came screaming at me, and I'm looking at him, what's wrong? What's wrong? He goes, don't pump the gas. And he said, we pump gas here. And I go, what? He goes, you can't pump your own gas. And I go,
Jersey.
Right.
Are you kidding me? I said, you betcha, buddy. You can pump my gas. We took pictures. We had a wonderful time. And I sent it back to all my friends in Texas. I go, in New Jersey, and I think New Hampshire and somewhere else, you can't pump your own gas. I love those states because I hate pumping gas. Is anybody with me, or do you guys drive?
I don't drive. That's why I moved to New York City area. I just don't drive. So that's not a question for me. Well, Jenna does, though.
I do. I am a big road warrior. I'm a Kansas girl that you had to drive to get anywhere. So here in Texas, people say, oh, I just can't do that. And I go, are you kidding? I'll drive across the state. That's like 4, Here in Texas, everything's, a ways away. I mean, I'm an hour and a half away from a copy place, and my printer broke down right before this event. So I got a copy from my friend's store in Gladewater, Texas. I drove to get it because, you do what you got to do. But anyway, that's just wild. What about you, Caroline?
What about me? What about me? What? I don't.
What about your dream come true?
I also would like the country to go back, and I sort of feel like it sort of is. I just want there to be much more kindness and more people thinking of other people than just sort of thinking of themselves. But I also wanted to ask you about that tiger behind you, Kathy.
Well, when I started the Pulpwood Queens, I grew up loving Tarzan, and I read Tarzan books. In fact, I've even got his battery's dead, but when you raise his arm, I loved Tarzan as a kid. I wanted to be him. I never wanted to be Jane because I thought she was a wimp. And so I swung out of the treehouse and everything. So when I started the Pulpwood Queens book club, which is named for the industry in East Texas, we're in the woods, and people don't think of Texas as the woods. but the part I live in is very wooded. And so I decided that I would have as our theme hot pink and animal prints. So I found these giant, I have a
I
lion,
love it.
I have a tiger, and I have a cheetah, and they're full size. And we had Mary Morris on earlier. Oh, there went my chair. And Mary Morris has written a book called All the Way to the Tiger.
Right.
So I have him up here. He's come to all the girlfriend weekends. I couldn't get the lion and the cheetah all on my couch in my living room. But that's the story about, because I love animals. I love, you know, all the storybooks of fairy tales and different things. And I'm a big kid in an old lady body. I still feel like, you know, when I went back to school, everybody goes, how was that? And I go, I would just fit right in, because I'm just, hey, 18, 19, 20, they were younger than my kids. And they all just embraced me when I went back to college. But I think that if you are young at heart, I'm just a big Peter Pan Tinkerbell, I guess. But I live in my own imaginary worlds, and those are the worlds of your books. I want the world to be a better place. And if there's one mission I could have in life, it's world peace. And I really, truly feel that if this world would be a lifelong learner and educate yourself and read, that could happen. But we get these pockets of where people never leave the place they were born.
Right.
Never
right.
picked up a book from high school, and they don't understand. But I have friends from all over the world, every religion, every faith or not faith of life. And I honestly think that it's fear of the unknown. If you don't understand about somebody, spend some time with them. What was that Denzel Washington movie where, you know, he was a coach and he had white football players and black football players, and then he made them live together?
Remember the Titans?
Oh my gosh, that film, I had chills, because I had the first Girl Scout troop in Jefferson, Texas that had black and white girls. And everybody told me, you can't do that. And I said, can't do what? And they said, you don't mix. And I said, mix what? I mean, you put a name on it, people. Have you read the Girl Scout handbook? It says anybody can be a Girl Scout regardless of race, color, religion, or economic background. So you're saying? And people didn't know what to think about me. And I ran it until the girls got so involved in junior high and high school, I had to stop. But every single one of those girls, one's an opera singer, she's in Japan. One's a RN in Houston. My daughter, you know, she graduated from college, and she's worked in theater, and she's now working in fashion design and things. I have my youngest daughter. I just feel like that if we all educate ourselves and we all work together in commonality, we'll find out that our differences, you don't have to have the same belief of people. I mean, God, I don't want anybody to be like me. I think God broke the mold when he made me. But I do think that we'll find that we have a lot more in common than people think. We all want the same things. We want to be loved, and we want to love, and we want food, water, shelter.
Mm-hmm.
We're all human beings on this planet. We got to learn to get along together. And you know, I think it's going to happen, but change always happens slow. Hopefully, you guys will see it happen in your lifetime. I hope I'll see it in mine. But I have a grandson now, and he will be 2 in March. My dream for him is a much better world, you know. And so he's a reader. We're reading to him.
That's important. That's great.
Read to the kids. And if
well, you know,
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just going to say book sales actually increased during the pandemic, which is great. Mm-hmm. Which is great. People have been getting comfort from books.
Well, the bookstore that we're helping during this event is the one that was on the Mighty Blaze with me, which is Sherry Staunt's Main Street Reads, and just outside of Charleston, South Carolina. They have a Pulpit Queen chapter. They have a Pulpit Queen virtual bookstore on their page. And I go, support your local independents, support Sherry. She had a panel of authors today. And I know they're going to be selling your books all year. So if you haven't sent them signed book plates, do, because she's going to sell them for us all year, because you're all going to be on your list. You're going to be on the list. I still haven't heard what book you want me to put on the list, Jenna, but I want to put you on our list. So do you want the Lost Family on our list?
Please. Yes,
I will get you on there, and I will let, Sherry's probably hearing this right now. Do we have any questions that anybody, do we want to open it up so people can ask?
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
We love questions.
Question.
Questions are my favorite part, actually.
And I just want to say too that everybody has to stay tuned, because Jenna's going to have this amazing, amazing memoir coming out. And you know, it's got everything you could ever want, including a dog. So watch out for it.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, I grew up with black labs, so you got a good.
That's what it's about.
I'm going to do a cover reveal for you guys if I can find the cover. I haven't announced yet. I'm going to probably announce after the inauguration and do like the cover reveal in March. Like this whole thing is planned out, but I'm going to find the cover reveal. So the book is called Woodrow on the Bench, and it's about my old black lab who lived to be 15, and his last 7 months of his life, he was not mobile. So we spent most of that 7 months literally on the bench across the street from my apartment. So I had like canceled all my book events and canceled all the stuff I usually do so that I could like carry him across the street to this bench. And what was amazing about it, I mean, many things were amazing, but it was hard. Like anybody who's ever taken care of an elder or taking care of a really heavy dog.
Dogs.
He was 80 pounds and I weigh like 120 pounds, you know, so I literally carried him up and down the stairs every day. And people helped me. So what he taught me by making me sit on the bench was that to be present, like not to move around all the time, and that my community would step up for me, that strangers would step up for me, like people stopped traffic for us, people bought us food, like people would like pick up this old dog's poop. Like, I mean, it was amazing. So he was so reaffirming and taught me that even when he was unable to walk, and in the end, like even unable to hear or see, you know, he was just a phenomenal dog. So it's all about the lessons that he taught me those last 7 months. And then HarperCollins bought it, so it'll be out in October this year. This is the cover.
October of this year?
Yeah, they're doing it really, really quickly.
Let's get it on our list.
Oh, yeah.
Send me all your information. We'll get it
I
up.
will.
I want you all to see what is right behind me. Can you see my cat? It's really mad at me right now because it's been, you know, that's Rush. It's a girl, but she acts like a guy. But anyway, Rush and I've never gotten through the pandemic if it wasn't for my 2 cats. So, and I'm taking on another one because it looks like we're going to be home for another year. And my friend has a kitten that she's got to find a home for. So I'm the cat lady. So what can I say? But I love it. Boudreaux, what is the title?
Woodrow, like Woodrow Wilson.
Woodrow.
On the bench. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'll announce it soon and then you won't be able to escape it because
Yeah.
I'll be
Jenna?
relentlessly promoting. Yes.
Jenna, I had a chocolate lab too that lived to be 15, so I know what it's like. She was just a sweetie pie.
It's so
It's really hard to put her down. And I was going to say, you know, it's all about the story. So I had a 6th grade teacher read to us. He read to us every Friday. And he read all the myths. When he got to the end of the Greeks and the Norse and all that, he didn't know what to do. So January 1st, when he showed up, or whatever the day we came back, this is 6th grade, he brought out his old torn book, Tarzan of the Apes.
Oh yeah. Well,
And so I've been a fan. This crazy thing is at the end of the year, he read book 3 in which Jane dies. If you've read the original book, she dies.
She dies?
She dies. And so because the movies are totally different. And I waited until I was an adult, I had a baby, and I went to the library and checked it out, book 4, to find out what happened. And she didn't die. So, but the original books are 1911, and
Yeah.
Jane looks like a Gibson girl and he looks like a Gibson boy. It's amazing. But I wanted to share, I had to go get this off.
Oh,
That's great.
I
is
got,
there a picture of Jane in there?
I don't know, but this is based on the movie. And I was in sixth
Oh,
grade.
Oh my
After all
gosh.
this time. So I have been a big fan for a long, long time.
I used to have all of them in paperback. I've got a couple of the original ones in first editions because I've been the biggest Tarzan fan. Now they're not politically correct, and I'm sorry, but you know, I still love Tarzan. So, well, we have like a few seconds left, and we are going on to the next panel. So, y'all, please, what is the final word that you want to share today? I'm so pumped.
I want to share with everybody that please read, just keep reading, sharing your books, buy books, support your local indie bookstores. If you're a writer, don't give up. Don't ever give up. Just keep going.
I
Jenna?
couldn't agree with that more. And I also want everybody to buy Caroline's latest book, With or Without You, which is phenomenal. I had the pleasure of promoting that on the Blaze, and all of Caroline's books. So she like has so many books I couldn't even list them all. And please support all the writers who you see here and also see in the chat. I mean, there are a lot of people who are like on this panel who are writers who I love. So please make sure to support all the writers. And if you are writers, aspiring writers, and you need some hand holding, like, you know where to find me and Caroline. We're both
Oh,
very
yeah.
permeable. Like, we are not snooty like we do wear the yoga pants. I respond to every email I get from everybody. And we know it's hard to build a life out of this profession, and it offers its sine curve still. Like, it doesn't matter like how far along you are in the process. Like, it is something that always keeps giving and something that always keeps frustrating. So if you want cheerleaders, both of us are really available on our websites, and also I'm always available on the Blaze. In fact, I'm just like a social media hoe. Like, I'm everywhere. So I'm very permeable, so hit me up anytime.
Together we can all have the beach
Love
house.
you both. I love you both. And thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining us. This is all going to be recorded and be up on my Kathy L. Murphy channel on YouTube. We'll